Bienvenidos, Kushamdid, and welcome Anne Arundel Community College learners from the CTS-130 Section 402 course for the spring 2021 semester. This is the Cisco Networking Academy's Introduction to Networks course, or ITNv7. In this packet tracer activity, we're now going to turn our attention and focus away from IPv4, and now we're going to be taking a look at IPv6. And in this activity, we're going to be configuring Link Local Addresses as well as Global Unicast IPv6 addresses. So let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at the activity and see what we're going to be asked to do. Now, this is our addressing table. However, there are some notes that accompany this activity. Specifically, when we're getting into Part 4, Step 1b, it cannot be completed due to a missing cable between accounting and switch 1. So we're going to see if this is still an issue in this activity. And we've got some advice here to follow, and you can see these are what the Link Local EUI64 addresses should be reflecting with each of those different devices. So again, let's step back to the activity. We're going to configure some IPv6 addressing on the router, on the servers, the clients, and then we're going to test and verify network connectivity. So part 1, we're going to configure IPv6 addressing on the router. So let's open up router 1 here, and let's give ourselves a little bit more room with which to work. So remember that most of the commands that you would run, like show IP route or show IP interface for IPv4 information, the only thing you need to do on a Cisco router is simply say show IPv6 route or show IPv6 interface brief. And so it's an easy transition from working with IPv4 to now work with IPv6. So the first thing they're going to have us do is get into privilege exec and then into global config, and they want us to turn on IPv6 unicast routing. Now, as a reminder, remember that you don't have to turn on IPv6 unicast routing in order to assign or configure IPv6 addresses on interfaces. They're just having us do this now so that we don't have to do it later. So remember that. I could do all of the IPv6 addressing and then turn on IPv6 unicast routing. Remember, the ability of Cisco devices to route IPv6 is off by default. So now that we've turned IPv6 unicast routing on, we're going to configure some IPv6 addresses. And we're going to start with interface gigabit Ethernet 00. So we'll go to interface gigabit Ethernet 00. And let's first bring that interface up and let's see where that interface resides. Well, you can see that interface or the gigabit Ethernet 00 interface is connected into switch 1. And again, you'll notice that accounting bug, so to speak, in packet tracer here, that accounting is not connected. It's going to be difficult to check because we don't have any wireless here, right? So that is missing. I just noticed that when I was looking down, whoops, to see the different connections that are there. All right, so that interface is up. We're going to go ahead and we're going to apply an IPv6 address. However, before we do that, let's check and see, do show IPv6 interface brief. And you'll notice that gigabit Ethernet 00 is unassigned, has no IPv6 addresses assigned. Now, the order of operations for this activity, step 2b, has us configuring a global unicast IPv6 address. What that is going to do is that will automagically use EUI64 in order to configure our link local address, right? So when we look at that, we're going to go ahead and put the global unicast address in there, and then we're going to have to configure the link local if we want it to be specially configured to that FE80::1. So here's what I mean. So let's say IPv6 address 2001:DB8:, 1:1:1/64. Now again, that is not the subnet mask length, right? That is the prefix length, meaning the first 64 bits represent the prefix. Now, before we enter that FE80::1 command, if I was to go ahead and rerun the command, what was it, show IPv6 interface, or do show IPv6 interface brief, take a look at what has happened here. So we already have a link local address, and I've touched on this before. The key thing to remember is that with EUI64, it's going to take the MAC address and it's going to drop this this, I can't highlight that actually, let me pull that off there. The FFFE is going to be dropped into the middle of what would be the MAC address. Now, there are some other things that get done. In fact, one other thing in terms of bits being flipped. However, for now, just remember that when you configure a global unicast address on the interface, it automatically configures the link local address. Now, why is it doing that? Right? And EUI64 stands for Extended Unique Identifier. Sorry, I left that out. So EUI64 is the Extended Unique Identifier. So why is it that when I configure a global unicast address, a link local address is automatically configured for me? And the reason for this is that at a minimum, you have to have the link local address. You cannot configure IPv6 on an interface and not have a link local address. And so the Cisco router knows that if you're configuring the global unicast address, the 2001:DB8, and there is no link local already configured on the interface, it will configure one for you. And that is also an important point, because when we go to configure what I'm assuming over here is going to be gig 01, I'll do the link local first, and you'll see that if you customize the link local address like we're about ready to do here, because we want something that's easy to remember, easy to read, and that we know is going to be on every interface on the router, if you do that first and then configure the global unicast address, it does not change your custom configured link local IPv6 address. The only time it uses this extended unique identifier 64, EUI 64, is for 64 bits, is to make sure that you have a link local address on that interface, because that is mandatory. You have to have a link local address. All right, so enough about that, but I want to make sure I drive that point home, because this becomes confusing for learners. They configure the IPv6 global unicast address, and then all of a sudden they see this link local address, which is just, you know, a dumpster fire in terms of hexadecimal characters, and they're not clear as to where that address came from, why it has to be configured, and why they can't remove it. So, but we can change it, right? So IPv6 address FE80::1. And this is a common scheme that's used on router interfaces. If it's router 1, FE80::1. If it's router 2, FE80::2, so forth and so on. Now, the key is if I hit enter here, we're going to get an error. It's going to come up and tell you, hey, incomplete command, because I have to let the router know that this is a link local address. And again, that's the end of the command right there. So now let's rerun that do show IPv6 interface brief command. And now take a look at the link local address. That is much easier to remember if you're going to be using link local addresses. For example, your default gateway value, it'd be much easier to have to type in FE80::1 than to type in what I have highlighted here, FE80::201:63 Fox Fox: Fox Echo 34: Baker 601, right? So it's kind of obvious as to why we want to customize that link local address. And this is again, a very common IPv6 scheme to use on router interfaces so that every link local address, remember, and that's the key with link local, it is only significant on that link. In other words, the only place on this interface right here that FE80::1 has any significance is on that interface, meaning I can use the same value here. I could use the same value here. And that's probably what we're going to end up doing in the activity. But again, it's local to the link. You cannot route link local addresses, right? So again, excuse me, we can put that same link local address on multiple interfaces on the same device. We can't use it on each end of the device or each end of the connection. So what I mean is you can't put FE80::1 here and then if we had it, let's say we had an address configured on the switch and put it over here. You can't do that because then they'd be conflicting, right? Just like you can't put an IPv4 address here and then put the same IPv4 address on this device. You can't do that. You'd have conflicting addresses. And so what happens is with link local addresses, right, on the same device, I can put on router 1, every interface on router 1, I can put FE80::1 as the IPv6 link local address. It's only significant on that link. All right, so that takes care of that. We already did our no shutdown. So now it says configure IPv6 addressing on gig 01. And I like this, right? Because it doesn't give us the commands. It's telling us, hey, you may have to look at the addressing table. You might have to go back and figure out what it is you need to enter in. So let's get on to interface gigabit Ethernet 01, and let's say no shut. And you can clearly see that the interface has come up. Now, what are we going to do for the link local address? Well, let's do it this way. Let me go ahead and say IPv6 address, and we're going to say FE80::1, right? Because that's the link local we're using on every interface on router 1. So if I say do show IPv6 interface brief, you can see, where is that? There it is right here. You can see that we only have the link local address. And unless we're going to be applying a global unicast address, all I need is a link local address. Again, you have to have at a minimum an IPv6 link local address if you're configuring IPv6 on an interface. So now we're going to have to come back up to the table here because I have no idea what we're doing for gig 01. And so let's get that IPv6 address entered in. And this is going to show us that now that I've customized the IPv6 link local address, even if I come in here and put in a global unicast address, 2001:DB8:1:2:1/64, even though I put this new global unicast address on there, I've already configured the link local address. Therefore, it is not going to be overwritten with an EUI64. Again, the extended unique identifier is simply a means of ensuring that an IPv6 link local address is placed onto the interface at a minimum, right? And if you do the global unicast address first and you don't have the link local on there, Cisco iOS knows, hey, we have to have the link local, so it configures it for you. If you already configured the link local, then you put the global unicast address on, it does not change that value. And again, that makes sense, right? You wouldn't think that it's going to change the value that you've customized and put on there just because you put on a new IPv6 global unicast address. All right, so the interface is up. We have the link local and the IPv6 global unicast address configured on the interface. Now we're going to go to the serial interface, and we're going to have to come back up here to see what we've got going on. So let's go ahead and get into serial 000. We'll say no shut, and that brings that serial interface up for the ISP. And let's go ahead and say IPv6 address, and we're going to say FE80. Whoops, sorry. No, that blew out. That overwrote what I was doing there. So IPv6 address FE80::1 link local. And let's go ahead and say IPv6 address 2001:DB8:1 1:A001:2/64. So that is my IPv6 address on the serial, the global unicast IPv6 address on the serial 000 interface. And as you can see, we've kind of been gathering completion percentage points up here as we move along. And so that is all of the configuration. Let's say do show IPv6 interface brief. And so now on each of the interfaces for this activity, the 2 gigabit Ethernet interfaces and the serial interface, we have our custom Link Local IPv6 address, and then we have our global unicast IPv6 address. And so everything looks good there. So now let's go ahead and walk through the verification, which we just did. So if any of the addresses, and this is what they want us to do, it's a good practice to verify when it's complete by comparing the configured values with the values in the addressing table. So if we roll back up here, we can see for gig 00, FE80::1, we're good there. 2001 DB8, 1:1:1. So that's good. We can see here for gig 01 that it should be 2001 DB8:1:2:1, and that's correct. And then we've got serial 000, 2001 DB8:1:A001:2. And so everything looks good from the addressing perspective here. And it says to make a change in IPv6 address, you must remove the incorrect address. And the reason for that is unlike IPv4, and let's go out to a real Cisco router and let me give you a quick example of what they're talking about here. And I'm going to leave those little dots there for right now. So on this router here, I also have a serial 000 interface. And if I was to say, do show IP interface brief, and then we will include 000, you'll see that there are no IPv4 addresses. And if we check here, IPv6, and there are no IPv6 addresses. And the reason I show you both is because what I'm about to show you is going to include IPv4 addresses. So on this router, if I was to go ahead and say IP address for an IPv4 address, so IP address 172.16.8.8, and we'll make it a /24, right? Now, if I realize after typing that command in, and let's go ahead and show that the interface is actually configured now with that address, if I decide that that's the wrong address, right? Or if I figure out that maybe I entered the wrong address in and I need to change it, I can simply recall the command, right? And then change it to the right value. Maybe it's supposed to be 88.88. And I hit enter. Now, if I go back to take a look at that address, that is the new address. I overwrote the old address, but this is IPv4 behavior. This is not how IPv6 behaves. So let's see how IPv6 behaves. Let's say IPv6 address FE80, and it's with the global unicast addresses. Because watch what happens here. If I say IPv6 address FE80::3 Link Local, and then I decide, oh, you know what? And let's go ahead and say do show IPv6 interface brief. Oh, and we're going to want to begin down here. Let's begin with serial so we can trim it down. Let me get this command in here. Oops, sorry. We'll say BEG serial. So here's my serial interface. So you can see on serial 000, I put in FE80::3. Well, unfortunately, this is router 8, right? So I decide, you know what? IPv6, I'm going to come back here and let's get this right. Let's make it so that it's like the loopback address, and the link local is FE80::8. And I hit enter. Now let's display the output again. And look at what happened here. With link local addresses, it simply overwrites the link local address. And this is where learners might get a little confused, because watch what happens when I say IPv6 address 2001:DB8:ACAD:, let's say 8:8/64. And so now, if I say do show IPv6 interface brief, I've got my link local address here, and I've got my global unicast address here. But then I realize, oh, that's right. It's not supposed to be 8::8. It's supposed to be 88:88. So I come up here and I fix it thinking that it's going to behave just like IPv4 and just like the IPv6 link local address. However, with global unicast addresses, that is not the behavior. You can have multiple IPv6 addresses on a single interface. In fact, I think I've shown this in a different video where I put like 5 different addresses, IPv6 addresses on an interface, and that is okay to do. Now, if I didn't want that address, that 2001, I would say no IPv6 address, and then I'm going to simply cut and paste it here to save some time. Control-C, Control-V. That is how, oops, sorry, no IPv6 address /64. That is how you get rid of the IPv6 global unicast address, right? And that's what this note in the packet tracer activity is talking about. To make a change in addressing with IPv6, you must remove the incorrect address or else they will both end up being there. And they give you an example here. And it's interesting, that example, if I was to say, do show IPv6 interface brief, and we look at that, I don't see that address. So I guess I'm looking to see, did they anticipate that that address would be on here? Because it is clearly not on here. So then let's go ahead, let's save the running configuration so I can copy the running configuration to the startup configuration. That way, in case the router reloads, reboots, gets powered off and then on, that all the work I've just done is in the startup config, and then that would be pulled into memory, right? That volatile memory space, and run as the running config. So it looks like we're pretty good with router 1 here. So now we're going to be doing some addressing on the servers. And I think what I might do is we may try to see if we can get connections working here. Connections is locked. All right, so we're not going to be able to connect the accounting server in here. So we're just going to skip by the account. Well, skip by it in terms of validation verification. I think we can still get in here and we can still get in here and configure things. All right, so part 2, let's configure IPv6 addressing on, yes, the accounting server. Of course, we start with the accounting server. All right, so let's go ahead and click on the IP configuration tab, and you can see right down here we have our IPv6 configuration, and it's already sort of chosen static. So what is the IPv6 address going to be? The global unicast is 2001:DB8:1:1:4, and then we tab over and we put in our prefix length of /64. Now, you'll notice as soon as I did that, there is my auto-magically generated extended unique identifier 64 link local IPv6 address. Now, what we cannot do here is change this to FE80::1. You can't do that because this is on the same link as router 1. We'd have conflicting link local addresses. So we're leaving that the way that it is, but the default gateway we set to FE80::1 because that is the link local address. So you don't use the global unicast address. And this is what I meant when I said you don't have to have a global unicast address on that router interface because we use the link local address for the default gateway value. Again, there's nothing wrong with putting a global unicast address on the router interface, but know that you don't need it if you're simply configuring that default gateway. And when we get into routing protocols, dynamic routing protocols like OSPF, you'll notice that we use that link local address to establish the neighbor adjacency on. All right, so we've taken care of that. And again, we can't test connectivity because it is not connected to anything. So now we're going to do step 2, configure the IPv6 addressing on the CAD server. All right, so the CAD server is a server that we can connect up, or that is connected up, I should say. And you can see we've got that sort of it already generated that link local address here. And now we need to get the CAD server IPv6 address. So we'll come up here and take a look. And we'll go ahead and set that to 2001 colon db8 colon, CAD colon 1 colon 2 colon 4. I need to make sure I get this right. Colon 4. And this is going to be a /64. We've got our link local address auto-magically generated. Now, could I get in there and say FE80 colon 55? Yeah, you could, right? We could customize it, but we're just going to leave it the way it is. Default gateway FE80 colon 1, right? That link local address. So let's fly back down here. My guess is they're just going to continue to tell us to configure IPv6 addressing. All right, so part 3, configure IPv6 addressing on the client. So we did the servers, right? Accounting and CAD. So now we're going to do the client. So we're working on billing, which is a laptop here. And in fact, we can do it right there. And what is the IPv6 address there? Well, they give it to us. It's 2001 colon db8 colon 1 colon 3 /64. And our link local address, you'll notice that it didn't auto-magically generate a link local address for us. 2001 db8 colon 1. Let me double check here, make sure I've got everything right. Yeah, so /64. So it didn't generate that link local address. Kind of interesting. So what I could do, again, is I could come in here and say FE80 colon 999, right? To fill a value in there. And default gateway is FE80 colon 1. All right, so that is the desktop. So now let me see if I've got connectivity here off the desktop. Again, we'll probably test these things later, but I'll say ping 2001, or let's just ping FE80 colon 1. And you can see we've got connectivity. If I come to the router, what happens if I say ping FE80 colon 999? Output interface is going to be gigabit Ethernet 00, and I can ping that custom link local address on the laptop billing, right? So everything worked good with billing. So repeat steps 1A through 1C for sales. Refer to the addressing table, and then we're going to do, we're going to do the engineering and what else does it say here? And the desktop. So we're just going to come up here and we'll finish everything out. We'll go from left to right. So on sales, let's go ahead and get the IPv6 address information in there. So if I said automatic, now when I do automatic, it drops that IPv6 link local address in there. All right, so let's go ahead and get the Global Unicast address in here for the sales PC 2001 db8 colon 1 colon 2. It's going to be a /64. And the default gateway, FE80 colon 1. Pretty convenient, right? That the default gateway value, irrespective of the subnet, or I shouldn't say the subnet, of the IPv6 network, that link local address is the same address on every interface on router 1. So it makes it convenient. And let's go ahead and ping FE80 colon 1. And it works perfectly. So let's go ahead and do, well, we already did billing. And let me see, I'm going to see if we get points for, let's check this out. If I was to, well, if I change it now, it may break. Let's see when we get to the end of the activity. I was thinking about clicking automatic and then coming back and clicking and letting it auto-magically give us a link local address. In fact, let me go ahead and do that because we know this is 113. So I'm going to get rid of that value. We're going to get rid of this. We're going to get rid of that. I'm going to click automatic, static, and yeah, no, it's going to keep that in there. So now we get the bonus lab, 2001 db8 colon 1 colon 3 /64, and we'll say FE80 colon 1. Whoops, 1 to 1 in there. So FE80 colon 1. Oh boy, typos are killing me here. FE80 colon, let go of that shift key, colon 1. All right, so now we'll step over to, actually we've done accounting, I believe. Yep, accounting is done. We'll come to design, and let's get design set up here with, we'll go automatic, and you can see it sort of automatically generates that EUI64 here. And again, the first couple that we did where it was already in there, it's a packet tracer thing, right? Because you can see here it's generating it when we do the automatic and flip back to static. So db8 colon, and this is design, and it's going to be 1 2 /64, and then FE80 colon 1. And so let's see if I can ping FE80::1. Fantastic. And then this would leave engineering, which I believe, okay, we did not do engineering. So we'll bring engineering up here and we'll go ahead and click automatic, back to static. IPv6 address for engineering is 2001:db8:, where did engineering go? 1:2:3/64 FE80::1 for that default gateway value. And then let's test. Can I get to my default gateway? FE80::1. And we can. Now, remember over here on billing how I made it FE80::999? Well, let's see. Can I go from anything over here to that FE80::9? Let's check it out. So ping FE80::999. I can't because it's not on the same link that I'm on, right? It's over here on this link between router 1 and billing. And so that's how you can get away with using link local addresses on the same interface in multiple locations. And we already did that as well. So again, the activity has us at 100%. And let's go ahead though, let's check our connectivity out to the ISP. And we've got some web pages we could take a look at as well. So let's do that. So let's come over here and let's pull our browser up. And again, not always fun to deal with IPv6 addresses when you have to type them in, 1:1:4. And let's click go. And let's see, am I able to get out to the internet? And what can we see here? All right, well, we don't see anything. Let me check that address, 2001:db8:1:1:4. And I'm wondering if it's only going to work. So click the sales, click the desktop tab, ipconfig. All right, so the request timed out. So we're going to, oh, wait, okay, yeah, no, I'm not on the accounting box. For a second there, I thought I might have been in the accounting box. So let's figure out what might be wrong here. Let me see if I can even ping that address, 2001:db8:1:1:4. Can we get to that address? And it doesn't look like we're going to get to that address. Let me come up here and check and see. ISP, that address is not listed in the addressing table, which is making me a little bit nervous. Let me see if from the router can we ping that address. So ping 2001:db8:1:1:4. Oh, wait a second. Are we pinging? No, okay, we're not pinging. Oh, so that was the note there. So I was thinking that was going out to the internet, not because we're pulling a web browser up, but that's not the case. So the problem is that address is the accounting address. So that is the problem with the accounting server. And I just, then you see this here, because again, I was focused on the address thinking, oh, we're going to go out to the internet. We're not going to the internet. We're actually trying to go to the accounting server that doesn't even have a connection. So it's not going to work. So to ping the ISP, I guess we can go ahead and say, ping 2001:db8:1:A001:1. We can do that, but let's come down here and see from these servers, can we get out to the internet? 2001:db8:1:A001:1, and we've got connectivity out to the internet. So that's working great. So the CAD server, though, the CAD server should serve web pages up. So what is the address of the CAD server? So :1, 2, and then 4. So from sales, if I was to come back to the web browser here and say 2001:db8:1:2:4, yeah, welcome to the CAD server. So we could check our connectivity to the CAD server. Accounting, not so much. No connection here. All right, well, that is going to do it for this activity covering IPv6 addressing. And again, we covered a lot of ground. We saw why and how that EUI64 link local address gets generated. And we also looked at how we would remove a global unicast address if we were unhappy with that, how we applied the link local address, the same address, to all of the router interfaces to use as a default gateway value. And we tested our connectivity out to the ISP and over to the CAD server, not the accounting server. All right, well, that does it for Packet Tracer 12.6.6. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.